Good evening. We will start with the BZA June 23rd, 2021. The first thing we have is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Very quick explanation of the procedures. This evening we'll hear the case first, and then after that we will hear from the staff, and then we'll hear the applicant. Then we'll ask for anybody in the audience that has a for or against this application, and then at that point we'll close the public portion. And then anyone that has spoken during the evening, whether it be for or against, we can ask questions of those participants. And then the vote will happen this evening, and we'll have a decision this evening as well. Can we do a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Bertold? Mr. Hill?
Present.
Mr. Reinger?
Present.
Mr. Shupp?
Present.
Mr. Roberto?
Here. So I notice Mr. Bartol is absent, and our alternate is also not present, so we will end up having a quorum tonight. All right. So the next part, we will be swearing in anyone that's going to be speaking this evening. If you are speaking this evening, first of all, make sure you signed in the back, and if you have, great, and then I'm going to ask you to stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth before the Board of Zoning Appeals? Say I do.
I do.
Thank you. And we'll wait for our sign-in sheet. Thank you, sir. Okay, so our first case this evening would be BZA 2021-04. It is a request for a variance for additional wall sign area allowance. The location of the property in question is at 9686 Colerain Avenue. The applicant and owner is Atlantic Signs on behalf of the property owner, USREL Real Estate Holdings. Does the staff have a presentation?
Yes, we do.
Thank you.
This property is located in a shopping center. It contains a large strip building and a smaller strip building and a restaurant, all on multiple properties, but they're all under the same ownership. This particular shopping center formerly contained a Kroger's, and that Kroger space has been subdivided into two large spaces, almost in half. Big Lots took the northern half, and the applicant is taking the southern half of that larger space. And then there's a couple other very small tenants in that particular center. This is a map showing the location and the portion of the main building where the Ross store is proposed to be located. This property also contains two large pylon signs, the tall signs out by the street, one on Springdale Road, one on Colerain Avenue. The one on Colerain Avenue is slightly larger than the Springdale one, but both of them are significantly taller and larger and closer to the street than what our current regulations would allow. The pylon sign, oh, how'd that get in there? Sorry.
Right.
The pylon signs are really not a part of the appeal for tonight. They can reface those indefinitely as long as they don't make structural changes. I would say, though, it does have some impact on the decision in the sense that they are proposing a 161 square foot panel in a two-sided in that Colerain Avenue one, which does contribute to their ability to be recognized. But the replacement of that panel itself is not in question, just to understand that. This particular property is zoned under two zone classifications. I'm not really sure why there is that division line, because the division line actually splits one of the buildings. B2 is a general commercial that is more retail oriented. The B3 tends to be more quasi-industrial. It is a much heavier use category. The proposed use is retail and would be considered a permitted use. This is what the building looked like when Kroger's was still operating in the building. They had a wall sign. That wall sign was 150 square feet, which is the maximum allowed. Because they're dividing the space, each of the new tenants is allowed a maximum of 150 square feet. That's the cap. So they kind of benefit by gaining more signs when they subdivide up to that 150 square feet, because the building is well over 300 feet long. And so that is what gives them their sign eligibility. This is a current view of the property. You can see the Big Lots sign. The area in that dashed area is what is proposed for the Ross Dress for Less. They will be completely configuring that facade, and you have a illustration in the packet, and I've got it in here too. So it really won't look quite like this when they take occupancy, versus the Big Lots really made no exterior change from what the Kroger store was. We'll go back real quick. The Big Lots signs, they are eligible for the 150 square feet. Each of those is about 47 and a half square feet. So the two of those combined are less than 2/3 of what they are eligible to be. In other words, they could have gone 1/3 larger than that, but they chose not to. So just by comparison, what they put on could have been larger. This is the pylon sign. It is kind of showing its age, but structurally, apparently, it's still good.
Good windstorm.
Yeah. There's a restaurant that has been vacant for some time. They formerly had a panel on this, and there were some other smaller retail stores that had panels that are no longer there. And this is where the Ross panel would go, next to the Big Lots up at the top. That was formerly one big Kroger panel, but it was subdivided. This is the one on Springdale Road. It's very similar, but just slightly smaller. This is from the Big Lots application. They were approved about a year ago for that sign. And it's, 47.38 square feet is what times 2. Across the street is Northgate Mall. This is the former Dillard's store space. When Dillard's was subdivided, they went through our zoning commission because that is a planned district. And they went to zoning commission with a total sign package for the mall that dealt with wall signs, freestanding signs, wayfinding, and all that together. But for our purposes, this particular facade, each of those tenants were allotted 150 square feet each for those spaces, just as a configuration. The one to the far right had an H.H. Gregg, but that space is now vacant. This is the proposal for the sign. This one is proposed at 335 square feet. It exceeds the maximum by 185 square feet, so it's more than double of what would normally be allowed. By the way, the signs are, let me get my laser pointer going here. Sorry about this, laser pointer. The main sign is really what gobbles up most of the square footage, but then there's two smaller signs, one here and one on this other side. Those are 8 square feet each, and then underneath the canopy, it doesn't show up on here, there's another one for about another 8 square feet. It's double-sided, but we'd count one side of that because it's perpendicular to the building. So it's the combination of basically 4 signs that come up to that total square footage. And this is from the application, the Springdale Road and the Colerain Avenue pylon signs. The code has two parameters for basically setting the size for wall signs. They're permitted a ratio of 1 square feet for each lineal foot of building frontage, and then section 2 caps that at 150 square feet. So they are actually over, because they're 171 lineal feet of building width. If it weren't for section 2, they would be able to go up to 171 square feet, but section 2 then caps them back at 150. Hope that makes some sense. The review criteria, and this is for all variance applications. A, the board shall not be authorized to grant a variance that is otherwise prohibited in the zoning district in which the property is located. B, the board may authorize a variance when such variance will not be contrary to the public interest, where owning to special conditions, a literal enforcement of the resolution will result in unnecessary hardship, and so the spirit of the resolution shall be observed and substantial justice done. C, the Board of Zoning Appeals may impose such conditions or restrictions upon the property benefited by the variance as the Board of Zoning Appeals may deem necessary to comply with the standards set forth in this section to reduce or minimize the impact of such variance upon other property in the neighborhood and to further the purpose and intent of this resolution. D, the granting of a variance shall not be authorized unless the Board of Zoning Appeals finds that such variance from the provisions and requirements of this resolution will not be contrary to the public interest and owning to special conditions pertaining to specific piece of property. The literal enforcement of the provisions or requirements of this resolution would cause unnecessary hardship. D, which is continued, the Board of Zoning Appeals may attach thereto such conditions regarding the location, character, and other features of the proposed structure or use as it may deem necessary to the interest and furtherance of the purposes of this resolution and in the public interest. E, no variance shall be considered or granted by the Board of Zoning Appeals which will allow a change in use of the parcel, building, or structure where the change or use could be accomplished by redistricting the subject property. The findings are that the property in question would likely yield a reasonable return without the variance. The property can reasonably be identified with signs meeting the current zoning regulations. Number 2, the sign variance requested is substantial since it's 223% over what is allowed for the signage. The granting of the variance would be a consideration that is not available to other property owners in the neighborhood. Number 4, granting of the variance would probably have a negative impact on the neighboring property since the Ross sign would be more than triple the size of the Big Lot sign for similar size space. It would create a precedent to allow for sign variances if requested by neighboring properties. Approval of the sign variance would not affect the delivery of government services. There are no topographic issues related to this property which could constrain the reasonable application of the sign regulation without additional expenses. And 7, by taking into consideration the benefit to the applicant if the variance is granted is weighed against the potential detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood and broader community, staff finds that substantial justice would be done by not granting the variance. Staff's recommendation is for denial of the variance request. The key thing in staff's mind is that signs are intended for identification of businesses. The first identification is going to be the main pylon sign out on Colerain Avenue, which clearly will identify that this particular business is at this location. Once a person turns into the parking lot, the building is substantially back from the street, but at 150 square feet, it would still be clearly identifiable in its location. So that is our recommendation.
Okay. Do we have any questions for the staff on the board? I see none. Is the applicant present?
Hi.
Hi.
My name's Brooke. I'm with Atlantic Sign Company,
And give us your address if you don't mind, please.
413 Washington Avenue, Newport, Kentucky,
Thank you.
41071. He covered everything, basically. The only thing that he didn't show you, and I just wanted to show you guys, when Ross is going to come in, they're going to redo that entire facade. So when they put up the new facade, and you put a 150 square foot sign on that facade, it becomes very small. And yes, you can see the pylon signs, and yes, you'll be able to see it from the road, but it just kind of loses its presence. It kind of gets lost a little bit. And do you want this?
If you want to present it, we can take it in as evidence. Let the records reflect that we've accepted a rendering that shows the sign reduced in size to the allowable size, and the board has now received it, and we're going to look at it. If you want to continue on, we'll look at this.
I think that the board should take into consideration that Ross is redoing that entire facade, so it will bring a facelift to that shopping center. I drove by it on my way here, and it's a little rundown. It's a little, it'll give it a bit more of a facelift, and it might invite more tenants into that building to fix that pylon sign, fill up those tenant spaces, bring in a little bit more business to the area, which I think is ideal. And with everything that is across the street from it, it gives them kind of the same look as what they have at the mall across the street, because it's actually the same sign company on each side.
Okay.
So basically he covered everything. And our only request is obviously we'd like to have the larger sign. And when you see it on the facade, it does lose its presence. It just kind of gets sucked into this giant wall. So
Okay.
that's
That's
it.
your presentation. Perfect. Is there anyone else speaking in favor of the applicant? Anyone else here to speak and against? I see none. Can I have a motion for closing the public portion, please?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Reinger,
Aye.
Mr. Shup,
Aye.
Mr. Weisskopf, not here, and Mr. Roberto.
Yes. Okay, we'll start off with Mr. Shupp. Would you have any questions for the applicant or for staff?
No, I do not.
Okay. Mr. Hill?
Brooke, I do have a couple questions for you. My first question is, does Ross have like a corporate signage package that they require that you have to have this size as a standard size, or is there some wiggle room?
It's not the standard. Ross has the standard facade, and they build the sign based on the facade. Because I think we just did one out in Union Township, and their facade was bigger, so their sign was obviously bigger. But it's the same look. They have like a corporate brand. And so the facade is what's important. They will give some wiggle room because they obviously want their sign.
Right.
I do think that 150 just looks small, and it just makes it kind of hard to see.
Are and then my second question is, the smaller signs that you have, are those necessary if you have a bigger sign?
That's part of the branding.
That's part of the branding,
That's kind
okay.
of their, every other Ross that I've ever seen has had those two on the side. It's just part of their branding.
Okay. That's all the questions that I have at this time.
Mr. Reininger?
Just a question on the small signs. What do the small signs say?
Ross,
Oh, they say the same thing as the large sign.
yeah.
I think you're to be commended for the new facade, and I believe that facade will anchor that store even with a 150 square foot sign. I mean, it does stand out and makes it a distinct entrance. The 150 square feet is pretty consistent in our township, and I think to let this one go would be difficult to justify for the next person coming in. But the new facade, I think, will give you the look you want, and you've got signs on two other arteries coming in that directs them to your parking lot. So Thank you for your presentation.
Okay, so here's our challenge from the
Okay.
board. And so you understand where we're coming from our perspective.
All right.
There has to be a hardship
Right.
for us really to grant a variance.
Right.
And in this case, we're really not seeing a hardship because it's not a standard package. You know, it can be fluctuated up and down depending on the scale of the building. And in this case, it needs to be scaled just so it meets the code that we have established. I personally like the bigger frontage, and I agree with you. I've got a marketing background. It makes more sense, and it's more eye appealing to me.
Right. Correct. Yeah.
But unfortunately, that's not justification,
Okay.
and so there's not a hardship. So unfortunately, I believe if I'm gauging the board correctly, this is probably not going to survive. Is there anything that you can do to help? I mean, I noticed on your second rendering, you've eliminated the smaller signs.
I think that she just threw it on a rendering.
So she was just
Yeah.
quickly doing it.
I just wanted, because sometimes I think it helps to see it on the
Absolutely.
facade and just to kind of judge what you're doing. But yeah, the part of the branding are the two signs and then the blade sign. And then obviously the facade is part of their branding as well. I do think Ross does have wiggle room. They want their sign. So I don't know if there's anything between what we're asking and what the code says where we could meet in the middle or.
Unfortunately, we can't change the code.
Right.
So the only way that we could accommodate is if there was a hardship
Okay.
because of the code. And in this case, you've got 3 really large signs that are giving you indication. The other thing, Marty, is what's the distance between Colerain Avenue and you were given an example of across the street, Marshall's, and that sign is 150 square feet. Is there a greater distance from the street to Ross's location that could justify a hardship for a larger sign?
Yeah, I actually scaled it out and didn't include those numbers in the staff report. But yeah, and as I recall, I think it's about 275 feet to Northgate Mall, and it's about 400, I think, to the Kroger. So it is
Significantly
farther
further
from the
back.
road.
Yeah,
So, I
I
mean,
kind
I-
of like that.
Yeah, so if you'll go back to the picture of the Biggs lot,
Yeah.
because I can give you what I would see as a hardship.
I like it. Yeah.
So look at the available sign that's over to the right. I mean, I can't see it. And you can barely see the Big Lots sign only because they're at an angle. If they were straight on, you might be, if they would have made their full size 150 and one sign, that would have definitely made them probably
Right.
pop out larger. But now you're increasing the facade size, and then you're gonna have the small little. I mean, I struggle with it. I really think that there is a disadvantage there because they are so far off the road that they don't get that. But the pylons really, they're there. It's a big.
When I was driving, I came up from Newport, obviously, because that's where I live. I came up. I just lost the name of the street.
Colerain Avenue.
Thank you. I don't know what. And I had to actually look for the building. And even with the Big Lots pylon, I was looking for the Big Lots because I was like, oh, that's what I'm looking for. I still missed it. Because it is set back just far enough that you're not looking for it. And Ross is new to Ohio. I don't think it's a very prominent brand here. So
It's a southern company.
yeah, I'm from Arizona, and they're all over Arizona. So I think it's West Coast moving east. But it's a prominent brand, becoming a prominent brand in the area. They just built, like I said, there's one in Union Township they just built. There's one in Newport that they just built, and they all have the same look. And so it just kind of it triggers your eye to be like, oh, that's a Ross. And the sign, you're right, is further back. I wish I could figure out the math of if you have a 150-foot sign, how big the letters are and how far away you are.
Well, we can
But I
kind
can't
of
do
we
that
can
on
kind
my
of
head.
gauge it by the Big Lots. So the Big Lots is actually a third of the, essentially if they had 3 in a row, that would be their 150 square feet.
Right. Oh, no, I was thinking how far away you were from the road to see the sign.
Right. Well, that's what we're seeing. So if we're looking at Big Lots,
And you can barely read it.
That is the scale of the font that you probably are going to be
Yeah,
limited
and you
to.
can you can see it. You know what it is because you know what it is. But if you were just passing by, you'd miss it.
Right.
Marty, is this image taken from the road, or were you actually on the property?
I was on the property. They have a main entry road that goes in probably 50 feet.
Okay.
And then you hit the parking lot. I was right where that entry road hits the parking lot.
Okay.
So you were actually 50 feet further in even from the road.
Right.
I think that's the hardship.
Trustees aren't going to like me because
It's a small sign set back really far from the road, so it makes sense to have a larger sign. I know the pylon signs definitely give you that visibility, but
right.
if you're just driving, you're not always just looking at the pylons. And again, I think that having that new facade will bring some sort of life back to this shopping center. And it might push something.
There's no argument there. This is a great thing for Colerain Township, and trust me, this board is business friendly. It's just we're restricted
Right.
by a hardship.
Right. They were
And so
explaining
that's
to
what we're
me.
trying
Yeah.
to find the hardship.
Yeah. They were explaining. Like I said, I'm from Arizona. I've only lived here for almost 2 years, and they were explaining to me that how Colerain has changed. How it used to be you could do whatever you wanted, and now it's like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
And so I understand that part of it.
I do have a question for Marty.
Okay.
Marty, with regards to the signs, is there a provision that talks about whether or not it's visible from the road? Like, so for the smaller signs, I mean, I think you'd be hard pressed to say that you can actually see those little bitty raw signs from the road. I mean, with those, I mean, I know they still count towards the square footage, but
Yeah.
is there something in the code that would allow those to not necessarily be counted in that calculation?
No, the only time we don't count them if they're things like menu boards
Okay.
that literally you have to drive up to them to read the fine print.
Right.
Anything other than that's considered visible.
Okay. Thank you.
If it's between the small signs and the larger sign, I can ask that question. Because I would assume that Ross would rather have the larger wall sign and eliminate the smaller oval sign.
But we're talking 24 square feet that you're
Right.
eliminating, so it's not going to help you.
I know.
Right.
Also, keep in mind, you're not approving a sign design, you're approving an allotment of total
Right.
square footage.
Yeah.
That goes beyond, if Ross leaves and the next store comes, they will be entitled to whatever you decide tonight.
All right, I'll get technical on you. So, because you're measuring from edge to edge from letter to letter, correct?
The way I do them, like the oval signs, do a rectangle,
square it
those
out.
are 8 square foot. I calculated the dress for less block and the Ross block separate.
Okay. So you actually did a
That
favor.
did help.
Yeah, that helped
helped.
them out.
Yes.
I mean, could we go as far as to just doing the letters?
From staff standpoint, if we have to start drawing box around every single letter, that would not be.
I'm not looking to create a hardship on my staff. I'm just trying to.
Yeah, and technically, I should
Put toothpaste in
include
the tube.
even the space between Ross and dress for less. The space between lines is supposed to be calculated.
Okay.
This particular one, I went back and redid, and I did not include that space. So it is just the words.
Okay, so overall, there's a 10-foot reduction in the length of the Ross. Is there room for compromise? Can the board make a recommendation that we have them reduce it down, but not to the level of the 150 square feet? I mean, I personally think that we need to review, commission's listening to this now, we need to review the distance from the street to where the sign is being seen, because that does make a difference as to the scale of the sign, the need. And in this case, that's being affected. You can't compare Marshall's to Ross's because there's a 200 more square feet or 200 more linear foot to see the sign. And If they didn't have the pylon, then they'd have a really great case to argue it. Unfortunately, I don't think we can ferret out a hardship for you.
Right.
We're trying, but
I know, I'm trying to think of a hardship myself. Yeah, the biggest hardship, like you said, the biggest hardship is going to be seeing it from the road. But again, the pylons, I guess, cancel out that hardship. And I don't think they're willing to not have a pylon sign. I don't think they're gonna.
no,
Marty,
me,
so
if I had my druthers, I'd get rid of the pylon sign and have your wall sign.
Right. But I don't think because there's that giant pylon sign, it wouldn't make sense to not have something in there.
So, am I hearing this correctly? If they didn't use the pylon signs, they could use that on their building?
No.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, oh,
okay.
no.
I was going to say like that.
That's
That's,
not-
that's
The argument is that they're you can find them because they have a big, huge pylon.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
If the pylon wasn't there, our hardship is that we're further back from the road.
And
I
harder-
would say
harder to
from
see.
staff's perspective, if for some reason the pylon sign came down and they put a sign that conforms to our current regulations for a pylon sign, which would be significantly smaller,
And shorter.
our perspective towards the wall sign would probably be different.
Right.
However, they're entitled to use that pylon indefinitely.
Until somebody runs into it and breaks the sign.
Yeah, and if that happens and they reapply, I would say, hey, circumstances have changed. Maybe you want to go 1-for-1, which is 171 square feet versus capping it. Something to that effect, but clearly not more than double.
Right.
And that is always an option for the board. You cannot grant more square footage than what's been asked for, but you can do less.
Do we have any recommendations before I speak?
No, it is attractive.
So they're asking for 335.
I'm trying to do some quick math, what the square footage would be if I.
Mr. Chairman, I've got a question
Yes,
for
sir.
the applicant,
Yes.
if I may. The signs on the pylon, the two signs, will they have the same characteristics as a sign on the building? In other words, the font that is used in the coloring, so it won't be a just generic black and white. It's going to have the same look.
Yes, that's the Ross branding is that
Okay.
font and the colors, yeah.
Thank you.
So they'll have it. Everything matches.
Okay.
Any recommendations from the board?
If you're asking for a motion,
I am, please.
I will move that we deny the request for the variance.
Okay. Do we have a second to that?
I'd like to see, well, I'm not going to second that. I would like to see maybe if we can get her down to a size that's reasonable.
Okay. So that motion is getting ready to die on the floor unless somebody seconds it. Do we have another motion? I was thinking of splitting the difference. Rather than being 14 feet, change it to, add 5 feet, that would make it 19 feet. I don't know what the square footage equals. So the maximum would be the 171, whatever number we had in there that, so you add another 21 square feet, which is not huge, but it's at least more than what,
Oh, from Big Lots, is that what you're?
no, there was a reference to 171.
That's how much linear footage the building is, so
Oh,
to code,
Yeah.
that's what we would get if we didn't cap it at 150.
Right.
But because the code says that you cap it.
And given that they're increasing the face of that building, really, they should be entitled to even more linear footage but we've maxed it out based upon.
Well, I don't think the lineal footage of the building is changing, is it?
No,
No, the
well, they're raising
facade
the
height.
Yeah, they're raising the height,
The
but
height of it is, yeah.
Yeah.
that's measured based on the building.
Yeah.
So
Which if you look at it, if we were to put a 150 square foot sign on the facade that's currently there, that makes more sense.
right.
But because Ross is going in and upgrading the facade, that's why the bigger sign, because it fills the space. It's aesthetically pleasing, I think.
Wasn't that 171 a number that you brought
Yeah,
out?
that's their
That's their
lease
lease.
space width.
I mean,
I'll make a motion that we allow 171 square footage for the wall signage.
and any second? I'll second it. So we have a motion and a second. Discussion?
My only concern I have is that we're opening a window for other variances which would, absent the consistency that we've got going on Northgate Mall and we're trying to establish up and down the street. I don't disagree with a lot of the arguments, but if this board wants to discuss hardships on every sign case that comes in, that's what we're going to wind up facing. We've got some refuge in 150 square feet, and that allows individuals that are looking to put up signs to say, well, that's the limit, and they have to conform. But I think it opens up a Pandora's box, basically.
Okay. Anyone else?
I think that's what we look at. It's a case-by-case basis on a variance. I mean, if there is something that's there that can be discussed and talked about and that is valid, I think we should look into it. I mean, I think the distance does play a role in seeing a sign, and it's a little bit different. It's not apples to apples because across the street you have a PUD or a planned development, so they can come in with a huge sign package and get all that stuff worked out, versus they're kind of limited to straight zoning, the standards in the straight zoning. So, I mean, I think that's what we're here to do, is to look at, is there something in there that's a hardship for them? Not necessarily saying open up the door and let every single sign go through, but you kind of have to play with the cards, and they are giving something to the community with making the facade changes. That's how I see it, and I don't think that I'm trying to make the code not valid by doing that. I think we're trying to work with them to an extent of makes sense. So that's my 2 cents.
And with that, we're staying within the limitation that the building would allow anyway. So had they didn't have that predetermined maximum lineage, they would be allowed to do it. So
Right.
I mean, it's a little give, but it's not.
Some give is better than no give.
I still think, I agree that there's going to be a small marketing for that big space, but if you didn't have the pylons, that's where I would revisit it. It's when the tornado comes through and knocks that pylon over, that we, along with all the other billboards in Colerain Township.
Are you guys trying to remove pylons? Is that the end goal?
It just doesn't fit our code. It's way too big and
So
way
like
too.
no new pylons?
No, it just would have to be within the code.
Okay.
So it would have to be reduced in size. When you go back home, look at the Northgate Mall
Yeah.
sign, that is the appropriate size.
And just out of curiosity, in that shopping center, is it just Ross and Big Lots? Are they the only people, or are all those other places still in there? The Firestone and the
Some of the
vapes?
stores, the UPS
Okay.
store, wasn't it?
Yeah, the UPS store. I do have a question, Marty. From the perspective of what we have here at our quorum, a 2-2 is a no vote.
Correct. You need 3 yes votes.
Does the applicant have the authority to request that we table it until a full board is present, if that is the case?
That is an option.
Thanks
So
for that.
you have an option as the applicant. If you want us to vote tonight, you'll get a decision tonight,
Right.
potentially. But if it's 2-2, it's a no.
Right, and I think one thing I'm just gonna vocalize, and you guys can let me know what you think. You said, and I don't, just to make sure, every parcel in this shopping center is owned by the same people, is that what you said? It's all under one ownership?
Yes, the small strip, the large strip, which has the Ross and a restaurant.
Okay.
are all-
One thing I can take back to Ross is you can have a big sign maybe if you take down the ugly pylon sign and rebuild one within code and get with the people in your shopping center who are all the same ownership people already.
If you can get that accomplished, I'll let you have a bigger sign.
I'm just saying,
I'd-
you know, we've
I'd
done
be-
it.
I'd be willing
I've had
to-
other places do that where they said, this pylon sign is super ugly. It'd be great if we could get rid of it, and then we'll give you something in return for fixing this ugly eyesore. And I don't know if that's something they'll do. I don't know any of that. It's just something I can, if we table it based
Like
on
to
the
let her
vote.
explore that.
So you need to listen to what he's asking, as to whether or not you can request a table.
I can request a table.
Yes, you
Yes,
can.
yes, I
So-
will request a table,
Okay, so
and we can. Do I have to resubmit,
it has been tabled and
Yes.
it's been moved out. It's been moved out.
or will it just
Tabling.
end up
No,
on the
no,
July
if it's-
docket?
Yeah, we have,
That's a legal question, because typically if it's tabled, we come back, so they wouldn't have to re-advertise and everything. I mean, I guess I would lean on you or the attorney to.
that's true.
Right, it's all you're doing is moving it out another
Yeah,
month.
you're
Yeah.
pushing it to the next month.
When's
Right.
the July meeting?
28th?
It's on your agenda.
Okay.
Our
July-
agenda, not
okay.
yours.
Yeah, July 28th.
Okay. I think that,
So-
this is where my job gets sticky. I'm going to say, yes, let's table it, and then I will go back to Ross and say the option was to table it or probably get denied.
So the request from the applicant is to table it, and we need to make that motion and accept it, right? Or is it
I
just-
think, yeah,
just
so,
tabled?
so what you want to state is that you are requesting to table this until there's a full board present.
Okay.
So that you can have 5 votes,
Do
number
I need to
one.
repeat that verbatim back to you?
Yes.
Okay, I would like to request to table this until there's a full board to vote.
So the applicant has requested a table, and does the board need to make that as a recommendation?
Yeah, it'd probably be helpful before that if we have a withdrawal of the motion that's on
Okay,
the floor.
so-
I will withdraw my motion of approving the variance with 171 square footage.
And I will second that.
Okay. And then the new motion.
We'll make a
is-
new motion to accept the applicant's request to table until the next case where we could have a full board.
July 28th.
And I will second that. Any discussion?
I would just say, explore the opportunity, what we discussed with your client to see whether or not they can potentially acquire or make sure everybody's on board.
Right.
And if they could get those signs taken down, it may
Yeah,
be more
and it's
beneficial
like
for
it's-
them.
Yeah, we've done it with other locations around town, so
So
It's
go
worth a
back with
shot.
go back with the realistic expectations as to,
right.
so if you
So-
come back, in, it'd be helpful to bring in a 171 square foot so we
Okay,
know what
that's
it
what I
looks
was gonna say.
like.
That's where we could. That's our compromise at the moment is 171.
That's
Okay.
our compromise. So the motion has been made and seconded. There's no discussion. Roll call vote, please, to table this till next month's meeting.
Mr. Reinger?
Aye.
Mr. Shup?
Aye.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. Roberto?
Aye. So we have tabled it, and you don't have to stick around. The rest of this business meeting. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll let you guys know what we figure out.
All right, so we have no unfinished business. The next would be to approve the minutes of the meeting from May 26, 2021. Do we have a motion to approve that?
I will make a motion to approve.
Okay, and do we have a second? And roll call vote, please.
Mr. Reinger?
Aye.
Mr. Shup? Mr. Hill?
Aye.
Mr. Roberto?
Aye. Our next meeting, as we just stated, is July the 28th. And then we have an administrative matter. And Colerain Township has made a proclamation that they're going to recognize June 8th, 2021 as Tom Reininger Day in Colerain Township. Be it proclaimed by the Township trustees of Colerain Township that whereas Tom Reininger served on the Colerain Township Board of Zoning Appeals for over 17 years, serving 5 years as chairman, 3 years as vice chair, and 4 years as secretary, and whereas Tom is a skilled mediator who treated all applicants, board members, and staff with kindness and respect, whose primary concern was always been to the benefit of Colerain Township. And whereas Tom served 25 years on the board of Hamilton County Soil and Water Conservation District and was inducted into the Ohio Federation of Soil and Water Conservation District Supervisor Hall of Fame. And whereas Tom owns and operates the Walnut Creek Stable on Lick Road in Colerain Township, which is a very popular and well-known stable. And whereas Tom is a consummate professional who is respected by his peers for his devotion to the community and to his family, Colerain Township is proud to devote this day to Tom, and we would like to thank him for his service. Be it proclaimed that Colerain Township Board of Trustees does hereby recognize June 8th, 2021 as Tom Reininger Day in Colerain Township. And this has been adopted by the Colerain Township officers and trustees. Congratulations, sir.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
for your
Thank you for the kind words, and I bid you all adieu and the best of luck. It's been my privilege to serve with, I believe it's 5 different planners since I've started. And I knew I was getting long in the tooth when one of the planners commented on a case that was at the golf course. And the first time we ruled on that, he said, and this planner was a graduate of UC's planning school. He was in the 3rd grade. And he asked me, what was that about when I was in the 3rd grade? I didn't remember, but that I knew I had been on the board way too long. So thank you all very much, and thank you, Marty. And it'll be interesting to watch you on the tube, which I will be able to do. So good night.
Well, I appreciate your service. Thank you. It's been a pleasure working with you, and we look forward to great things in your next chapter.
Yep. Oh, well.
All right, with that, we will make a motion to adjourn. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Give it a second. And roll call vote, please.
Mr. Reinger,
Aye.
Mr. Shupp,
Aye.
Mr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Roberto.
Yes, we are adjourned.